October 7th, 2023. North Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A mother walks into a barber shop with her young son for a routine haircut. It's a busy Saturday afternoon. People are coming and going. Everything seems normal. Then, a man wearing a hoodie and a mask walks through the door. He says nothing. He doesn't hesitate. He pulls out a gun and opens fire. 40-year-old Tiffany Wade is shot twice. Once in the torso, once in the head, right in front of her child. The shooter runs out, jumps into a getaway car, and speeds away. When police review the surveillance footage, they make a chilling discovery. The killer wasn't a stranger. It was her ex-husband, a man who had just been released from prison. A man who discovered that while he was locked up, his wife had taken everything he owned. This wasn't a random act of violence. This was calculated revenge. Disclaimer. Before we continue, this case involves graphic descriptions of gun violence, domestic violence, and murder witnessed by a child. The content you're about to hear includes disturbing details about a targeted execution that took place in a public setting, the psychological impact on children who witnessed violence, and discussions of criminal history, including kidnapping and armed assault. This story also covers themes of revenge killings and the failure of the justice system to protect victims of domestic violence. Some viewers may find the surveillance footage descriptions and witness accounts particularly disturbing. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. This content is intended for mature audiences only, as viewer discretion is strongly advised. What followed that October afternoon was not just a murder investigation. It was a story about a successful businesswoman who tried to escape a toxic marriage, about a violent man who refused to let go, and about a justice system that released a dangerous criminal on bond, only to have him commit murder weeks later. And the tragedy didn't stop there. Just 2 days after Tiffany's murder, another woman connected to the same man was gunned down in what appeared to be a drive-by shooting. 2 women, 2 murders, 1 suspect still on the run. If you're here for true crime that exposes the failures of the justice system, that refuses to let victims be forgotten, hit that subscribe button. We bring you new cases every single day. Real stories, real victims, real questions that need answers. Let's talk about who Tiffany Wade was before she became a headline. Tiffany Natifa Wade was 40 years old, and in those 40 years, she had built an empire. Born and raised in North Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Tiffany was a woman who embodied ambition, generosity, faith, and resilience. From a young age, she knew exactly what she wanted. She wanted to help people, she wanted to succeed, and she wanted to build a life she could be proud of. By the time she was just 20 years old, Tiffany had already become a registered nurse. According to an Instagram post, she was the youngest person to ever graduate from Methodist Hospital Nursing School. Think about that, 20 years old, a licensed RN. While most people her age were still figuring out their major, Tiffany was already administering medicine and saving lives. One former classmate recalled how remarkable it was that Tiffany could give injections and prescribe medication while still being too young to legally buy a drink. That was just who she was, always ahead, always driven. But nursing was only the beginning of Tiffany's story. She was also a sharp and determined entrepreneur. Over the years, she owned and operated multiple businesses: a hair salon, a catering business, home healthcare services, and her own CBD and hemp brand. She ran all of these ventures under a single umbrella company using her nickname, Kisses. It was a strategic move that allowed her to manage multiple brands under one registered business. Smart, forward-thinking, always planning for the future. But Tiffany wasn't all work and no play. She loved the finer things in life. She wore designer clothes, Dior, Fendi, de Prada, Givenchy. She had custom wigs, expensive jewelry, and a lifestyle that reflected her success. And she didn't just spend money on herself. She made sure her children had everything they needed and wanted. Tiffany was the mother of 4 children, and according to everyone who knew her, Those kids were her entire world. One of the most telling examples of Tiffany's generosity came through her relationship with her father. On one of his birthdays, she surprised him with a $10,000 gift. She presented it as a large check and recorded the moment to share later. It wasn't about showing off. It was about love, about gratitude, about giving back to the man who had supported her. Faith was also central to Tiffany's life. She was described as a very faithful Muslim woman, deeply committed to her beliefs. Despite her busy lifestyle and financial success, she remained grounded in her religion. She traveled to places like Dubai, dressed modestly to reconnect with her faith, and spent time mentoring others, helping them learn how to read and understand the Quran. Those closest to her said Tiffany didn't just practice her religion privately. She shared it, taught it, lived by it. From the outside, Tiffany Wade had it all: success, family, faith, a bright future. But behind the scenes, her personal life was marked by turmoil. And that turmoil would eventually cost her everything. Chapter 2. The Marriage That Turned Toxic, 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock. Tiffany had been married to a man named Armand Hilton. He was the father of her youngest child, Storm. 44-year-old Armand, also known by the nickname Speedy, had a long and violent criminal history, and he had recently been released from prison. Tiffany rarely shared anything about their relationship publicly. Most people in her life didn't even know she was connected to someone with such a dangerous past. But the relationship was rocky from the start, filled with conflict, marked by tension that had been building for years. Armand's criminal record was extensive: robbery, conspiracy, aggravated assault, armed robbery, and most recently, kidnapping. In March 2022, Armand and several others kidnapped a 17-year-old boy and demanded ransom from his family. They had learned that the teen's family had recently received a $100,000 settlement. Acting on this information, they abducted the boy just outside a store and demanded $50,000. They threatened to kill him if their demands weren't met. Fortunately, the teen managed to escape. Police tracked down Armand and his accomplices and arrested them shortly afterward. But even with this serious charge, Armand was released on bond on June 12, 2023, just a few months before Tiffany's murder. Now, here's where things get complicated. Before his arrest, Armand had come into possession of a large sum of money. The source of these funds was never clearly identified, raising serious questions about whether they were obtained legally. Hoping to secure his future, Armand invested in real estate, but he used Tiffany's name to avoid suspicion. This decision placed Tiffany in a precarious position. If the money was tied to illegal activity, she risked being implicated as an accomplice, something she desperately wanted to avoid. While Armand was incarcerated, Tiffany made a decision. She filed for divorce. She couldn't continue living in the shadow of his criminal behavior. She couldn't keep waiting for him to change. And as a mother, she feared the impact his influence could have on their child. So she left him, and she moved on with her life. Tiffany eventually remarried. She found someone new, someone who treated her well, and she began building the life she had always wanted. She shared moments of her new happiness on social media: photos with her new husband, videos of family gatherings, public displays of a fresh start. But Armand saw every single post, and every single one fueled his rage. When he was finally released from prison, he felt betrayed. He had trusted Tiffany to manage his properties during his sentence. Instead, she had divorced him and remarried and refused to remove her name from the real estate he believed was his. He demanded that she transfer ownership back to him. She refused. To Armand, this wasn't just a personal rejection. It was a loss of control, a loss of money, a loss of power. And given his history, it was no surprise that his response took a violent turn. October 7th, 2023. Just before 2 p.m., Tiffany Wade went about her routine. She took her son to a barber shop in North Philadelphia, located on the 2500 block of West Lehigh Avenue. It was a busy Saturday afternoon. People were coming and going. Just another ordinary day. But surveillance footage would capture something chilling. A man wearing a hoodie and a mask approached the barber shop. He walked inside without saying a word. Moments later, gunfire rang out. Tiffany was shot twice. Once in the torso, once in the head. The shooter immediately fled the scene, running out of the shop, jumping into a silver Pontiac and speeding away. A 911 call was placed, reporting the shooting. When police and paramedics arrived, they found Tiffany lying unresponsive on the floor. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The attack was swift, targeted, executed in broad daylight, and Tiffany's young son witnessed the entire thing. Police say a gunman executed a woman while wearing a garment associated with the Muslim community. The fact that the shooter was wearing an izar, a traditional Muslim waist garment, raised questions about whether it was a disguise or something more sinister. Imam Hassan Abdi, a faith leader from the Germantown Masjid, spoke publicly about the concern it caused in the Muslim community. If it was a disguise, it's despicable behavior because it brings unnecessary attention to the Muslim community. If it wasn't a disguise, it's even more despicable because not only was it the month of Ramadan, the blessed month, the person committed one of the gravest crimes in Islam, which is murder. The murder shocked not just Tiffany's family, but the entire North Philadelphia community. Tiffany had been well known in the area. She was a successful entrepreneur, a devout Muslim who gave back to her community, a mother who loved her children fiercely. And now, she was gone, murdered in front of her own child. The day after Tiffany's murder, the Philadelphia Police Department launched an intensive investigation. Surveillance footage from the barbershop showed the shooter in the moments leading up to the murder. The manner in which he executed the crime, cold and calculated, suggested it was deliberate and premeditated. Witnesses confirmed that the shooter had fled in a silver Pontiac. But the license plates had been intentionally obscured, complicating the investigation. Still, it was clear from the footage that the shooter was not a random stranger. Investigators later determined that the man in the surveillance video was Armand Hilton, Tiffany's ex-husband, the man who had just been released from prison, the man who felt betrayed by her divorce and remarriage, the man who believed she had stolen his property. Tiffany had even posted worrying messages online suggesting she felt unsafe. But no one realized just how serious the situation had become. In one video posted to social media before her death, Tiffany addressed someone directly, warning them to stop threatening her. "I just left you 2 months ago. Stop throwing it in my face. If this is what you're going to do, go ahead and do it. Stop throwing it in my face. All right, I'm never physically going to hurt you. I'm going back to prison on that. I don't give a damn. Stop throwing it in my face." Those words, chilling in hindsight, suggested that Tiffany knew she was in danger, that she had been threatened, that she feared for her life. But she couldn't have known that within weeks, her ex-husband would walk into that barbershop and pull the trigger. As Tiffany's family struggled to come to terms with their loss, another tragedy unfolded. Just 2 days after Tiffany's murder, on October 9, 2023, Shantae Whitaker was gunned down in what appeared to be a drive-by shooting. Shantae was only 34 years old. She had lived a quiet life, free from criminal activity. Her great-grandfather, Josh Whitaker, spoke publicly about her character, describing her as a young woman who never strayed into wrongdoing. But here's the connection. Shantae was the mother of one of Armand Hilton's children. At first, investigators treated her death as a random act of violence. But as the case developed, suspicions grew that Shantae's death might not have been coincidental at all. It could, in fact, be linked to Tiffany's murder. The horror of that day was magnified by the presence of Shantae's daughter. The little girl had been in the bathroom when the gunfire erupted. Moments later, she discovered her mother's lifeless body in the living room, a sight no child should ever have to witness. This heartbreaking event added yet another layer to the devastating story of children left without parents because of violence. Just as Tiffany's son would forever carry the scars of losing his mother, Shantae's daughter now faced a lifetime marked by trauma and loss. The community, already shaken by Tiffany's murder, was plunged deeper into sorrow as news of Shantae's death spread. 2 women, 2 murders, 2 days apart. Both connected to the same man. And that man was still on the run. As of the time of this upload, the search for Armand Hilton continues. Law enforcement officials announced a $20,000 reward for any information that would lead to his arrest. But so far, Armand remains on the run. Police are looking for this man who they say targeted his victim, shooting her at point-blank range. He's seen walking up to the barbershop, then running from the scene. The crime scene was just feet from the 14th Police District. Neighbours expressed disbelief that something so violent could happen so close to a police station. It's right around the corner from the police station. So it's hard to believe. Authorities are treating this case with the highest urgency given the violent nature of the crime and Armand's long criminal history. Meanwhile, Tiffany's family is left to pick up the pieces. While justice is still pending, they've made sure that her legacy is honoured in the best way they know how, by continuing to show love and support for her children. Her youngest son, who witnessed his mother being shot by his own father, is deeply affected by the loss. The trauma of losing a parent, especially in such a violent and public manner, has left him scarred emotionally. His family has rallied around him to provide as much support as possible. Tiffany's siblings have shared their grief with the world, using social media and community gatherings to express the profound sadness and confusion they feel in the wake of her death. At Tiffany's memorial service, her family released doves as a symbol of peace and her spirit finding its way home. To the family and friends of Natifa Tiffany Wade, there is no loss greater than the loss of a human life. There is no pain greater than the pain of loss of a human life. As the doves circle and find their way home, your loved one, Miss Tiffany, is already home. Tiffany Wade was 40 years old, a nurse, an entrepreneur, a mother, a faithful Muslim, a woman who built businesses, gave back to her community and loved her children with everything she had. She left behind 4 children who will grow up without their mother, a young son who will carry the trauma of watching his father murder her, a family shattered by violence, and the man responsible, still free, still out there, still a danger to anyone who crosses his path. Tiffany's death has sparked a wider conversation about domestic violence, the justice system, and the treatment of repeat offenders. The fact that Armand Hilton was released on bond, despite his violent history, is one of the main points of contention. Should repeat offenders be given the opportunity to bond out? Many people, including Tiffany's family, argue that dangerous individuals like Armand should not have the opportunity to cause harm again. If he had remained in custody, and Tiffany would still be alive, Shantae might still be alive. 2 children wouldn't be living with the trauma of losing their mothers. But the system failed, and now 2 women are dead. Tiffany's tragic passing serves as a reminder of the importance of safety and awareness in relationships, and the need to address domestic violence before it's too late. Our deepest condolences go out to Tiffany's children, her father, her siblings, and everyone who loved her. May Tiffany's memory be a blessing. May her story push us to demand better protection for domestic violence survivors. And may Armand Hilton be brought to justice swiftly. Rest in peace, Tiffany Wade. Your legacy lives on through your children and the countless lives you touched. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there might know where Armand Hilton is hiding. Hit that subscribe button for daily true crime content that refuses to let victims be forgotten. What do you think about this case? Let us know in the comments below. Stay safe out there. See you in the next one.